I had one client who had, $4 or $5 million and was really concerned about whether she could afford a new dishwasher. Like, can I afford this?
Wow.
I'm like, yeah, you can totally.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, I'm Doug Lynam, and I am an investment advisor with Course Management Investment Advisors in Pinehurst, North Carolina, and welcome to All Things Aging.
And I'm Amy Obst, editor of OutreachNC, which is our monthly publication that we put out in the community. And today we're going to talk about an article that Doug just wrote for us about money myths and aging and retirement and some of the top things that you've seen, I guess the beliefs that you've seen as a money manager, and how some of them haven't proven to necessarily be, not that they're not true, but they don't play out quite as people thought.
Yep.
So I've got the list here, and I'm just going to go through them one by one.
Go for it.
And we'll just
be fun.
I want to hear what you have to say. All right, so the myth number one, and this is as we retire and move into the golden years, that money is just a practical issue.
Yeah, well, the thing that I've learned over the years is that money is more about emotions than the math. So the math says one thing, but the way we feel about our money and our finances has a bigger impact on our quality of well-being and our life than anything else, because I see clients can be in almost identical financial situations, but they feel very differently about it.
Interesting.
One can feel like, this is great, I have enough, I'm good to go. And someone else will be a constant source of anxiety and dread or shame or fear that can rack them for decades. And
Are they aware of that?
Oh, sure, they are. But really, money is where we store all of our hopes and fears and traumas and anxieties and childhood wounds and stories our parents told us that we maybe have internalized in some unhelpful ways that ultimately can really make your golden years a little less golden if you're not mindful of them.
What's an example of where the emotions of money have impacted the way that somebody's retirement has played out?
Well, for example, there's so many examples. Let me pick my favorite. I'll just give you a really simple example. I had one client who retired, and he was a teacher and retired with a very modest living. He was living in a trailer park with a not what we would call wealthy, but he was very comfortable with the life he had. He didn't have a lot of ego attached to it. He didn't have any status attached to it. He was just comfortable with his life, with his family, with his golf, and was perfectly content. And I have had clients living in mansions with many millions, if hundreds of millions of dollars, and they don't feel like it's enough. And because they feel like they haven't achieved enough, they haven't they're trying to keep up with the Joneses, or they're on what we call a hedonic treadmill, where they're always chasing the next high through the status symbols or purchases. And over time, they're just never content. They never find something internal inside themselves, beyond the math, beyond the numbers, that makes them feel good about themselves and where they are in life and the world.
So I think that the myth there is that wealth equals comfort.
Oh, correct.
Right.
Right, because comfort or happiness, right? It's ultimately, and that's what we'll get to with myth number two. It's like happiness is something that the money can't ever bring you. Money will not buy happiness. I think it was David Lee Roth who once said, money can't buy happiness, but it can buy you a yacht that will float right along next side of it, right? And so happiness is really an internal project that you're going to have to take on. And if you're not happy, the money anxieties can be real, the stressors are very real, and those can erode your mental health. But nonetheless, it's still going to have to be something you find for yourself beyond the math.
Interesting. So then number two, if I've saved enough, I'll feel secure.
Right. Totally false. Like I've met many clients who hit the number, like they hit the retirement goals, they get to the right number, they should feel secure, they should feel happy, but every time they spend $1, it's like the clock ticking down to their mortality in some way.
Interesting.
And so it feels like there's a little death happening when they're spending, or there's just great anxiety or fear or shame around where they're at in life. And so it really like I had one client who had $4 or $5 million and was really concerned about whether she could afford a new dishwasher. Like, can I afford this?
Wow.
I'm like, yeah, you can totally.
Yeah.
Yes, you have saved well. You have done everything kind of right financially, but on some level, can't find that inner security to ever really enjoy their wealth and be happy. Yeah, it's really. Or I had another couple who. Let's say sometimes there's that saying that what got you here won't get you there, right? And so what gets people to retirement, the frugality and the discipline that they put into practice to get them to a financially secure spot, often makes it hard for them to enjoy that wealth once they have it. Right? They can't ever turn the switch and be like, okay, now I can actually spend a little bit, go on a vacation, take that trip to Italy. One client was like sitting on probably $8-10 million, and was like, you just retired. Are you going to take that vacation now? And like, I don't know if we should do that. Can we afford it? Do we want to? It feels like there's just that anxiety is plaguing them to the point where they can't ever really be happy and enjoy those golden years, because the security is a feeling that is really about your emotions again, not the math.
I wonder if, because really you're talking about a pivot in personality, and one day just because you leave an office with the box of goods doesn't mean that your personality has changed.
Right, exactly.
Do you think that people are aware, oh, I'm saving, and I'm probably not going to enjoy spending? Or do you think that there's a disconnect where they do think, I'm going to leave the office and then spend all this money?
Well, I mean, it varies by personality, but there are certain personality types that do have that. Part of it is, I think, is that shift from the accumulation phase to the spending phase. Like, there's always that sense I can always earn more. If I make a mistake, I can overcome it. There's time, but now you realize there's a sense there's no room for error, and that real terror that people have that they're going to outlive their money, even when there's no likelihood of that happening. It leaves them in this state of constant vulnerability that they're not really willing to sort of let go a little bit and try to enjoy life when they hit those golden years.
And what's the fear if they did outlive their money? What is the fear?
I'll be living in a ditch. I'll be I'll be put in some state-sponsored facility, and I'll
alone in a room
be stuck or eating dog food out of a can because I've completely run out.
Do people ever worry about being a burden to their family if they don't have enough money?
Absolutely, that's a huge one. Thanks for mentioning it. It's like, then now who's going to take care of me, right? And then I'm a burden to my kids. I'm a burden to somebody.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Okay, myth number 3, I'll be happy when I finally retire.
Right. That's a big one. Like, I see there's a weird 6-month period at retirement that I see a lot of people go through, particularly men, when they have spent their whole life with their identity tied to the status, tied to being important, tied to having that paycheck, and suddenly all of those structures are gone. Their role as a provider, their role as an achiever is not how they define themselves anymore. And they think they're going to go into retirement and just play golf forever and sit on a beach and sipping margaritas. And they find that really doesn't make them happy, because happiness isn't an eternal vacation. Happiness comes from having deep meaning and purpose in your life, which is why I always remind clients is you never want to retire from something. You always want to retire to something. Like, what is the thing you're moving towards in this new stage of life that's going to give you meaning, give you structure, give you purpose, and a reason to put your pants on in the morning, besides just sitting on the couch watching cable news and or the History Channel, which is fine for a little bit, but ultimately you see some real depression sets in for many people in retirement because they thought it was going to be this endless vacation, and actually without purpose, life really. We need a reason to get up in the morning and feel like our gifts and our talents are of use and service to the world. I
think a lot of people too, they're so done with the bureaucracy of whatever career they've been in, and they can't wait to get out and not have to deal with it. But they often underestimate the power of the structure that was in place. Be here at this time for this weekend or this meeting or whatever. And once that's gone, the days start to kind of run together. And then there's no highs or lows. It's just kind of a steady.
Yeah, there's no weekends.
Right.
Weekends are irrelevant, right?
There's no evening or morning. It's just like this.
Yeah, and for many people, it's the forced social interaction. Even if it's in that bureaucracy, you're still interacting with people. You're still having connections, and suddenly a lot of those fall away if you don't tend to relationships. They will fall away. And I see that for many retirees is they don't build a new social network for themselves, and it becomes very isolating and very lonely.
I think for a lot of men too, women tend to do that over the course of the lifespan outside of work.
Yeah.
And then I hear a lot of women saying, my husband wants to go everywhere with me, and I have my own friends. I don't want him to come to Mahjong with me.
Right.
Yeah.
Give me some space, please.
All right, myth number 4 is that Medicare will cover my health care costs.
Yeah, that's a tough one because a lot of people think that it's sort of just an avoidance or denial of how expensive it really is medically to retire. The estimates are high that your medical care for most people is going to run over $350,000 without factoring in over a lifetime of retirement, without factoring in long-term care, which is another big burden, right? So we know about like 5 out of 7 people will need some form of long-term care, and that can get over $100,000 a year easy if for many people. So that's something that needs to be factored into your plan and have a budget for it. Otherwise, you can find yourselves in a really difficult spot. Yeah,
and that's something that people don't want to talk about.
Right.
It's hard to think when you're sitting in your current body functioning very well to think that one day
I'm not going to be able to manage. And
or that my spouse may not be able to manage it. Or
and that's one of the things is typically, obviously in most couples, one partner will predecease the other. Now what? Now you're relying on children, you're relying on extended family, but also you're relying on the medical care system for that help. And it's not cheap. Okay,
so myth number 5, which is interesting to juxtapose that against what we just talked about, is that being frugal is always wise. Seems like it would be wise after what we just talked about.
You would think so. So that's one of the paradoxes. Everyone's financial situation is unique, but one of the problems I really do see is not being able to enjoy those golden years to the extent that you're capable of, like the couple who wouldn't take that vacation or go spend some time with your grandchildren or go out to some nice restaurants and have a good time. If it's, and this is where a financial planner can be very helpful, an investment advisor can tell you, like, actually you should probably go spend some money on yourself or at least on somebody else, and because you have enough, and that these habits of saving and frugality that got you to here again aren't going to make you we're going to make you pretty miserable for the rest of your life if you don't learn to enjoy what you've earned and the wealth that you have. I see that very common in high net worth clients who just can't seem to relax a little bit, and carpe diem, you're not going to live forever, so you might as well, again, within prudence. We're not saying to be reckless, we're saying that frugality, that's a good practice, but miserliness is really a prison for many people that they get themselves trapped into, and that miserliness just makes their world smaller and smaller to the point where they're just not happy.
Well, and I see that with couples. One person is waiting for retirement. They've been promised, we're going to travel, we're going to go on world cruises, and then they get there and the other person's like, well, not this year. Well, and it can create a lot of conflict.
Oh, 100%. And that's a real problem, especially if you and your partner are on the same page about what your hopes and dreams and goals are and what you want out of this period in your life. So it can create a lot of tension.
Myth number 6 is my family is better off not knowing.
Yeah, that's a tough one because a lot of we were all guilty of this, but we don't want our children to see us in a position of frailty or vulnerability. We see, as parents, we often want to be the one who's in charge and in control, and sometimes when things aren't going well, or you're just scared, or you have fears, or you have anxieties, you don't want to burden your children with those worries. But I think it's really important to have honest, vulnerable conversations with your kids about where your finances are. Estate planning is a whole other topic, which we could probably dedicate an entire podcast to. But being able to not keeping this, I've seen couples who, they sleep together in the same bed for 50 years and they don't talk about the deepest anxieties they have around their money, their longevity, their health, their finances, and it bottles up. And for many people that can come out in very unhealthy ways with addictions and all kinds of problems that start to arise when you haven't really been able to have that space to be vulnerable and honest about what your fears and anxieties are and where you're at. So it doesn't come as a surprise. So when a fall happens, an accident occurs, and you reach that critical space where you really can't be making decisions for yourself, it's almost kind of too late at that point to be having the conversations with your kids about, well, what's the plan, right? So you need to have those difficult conversations well in advance of problems before they arise, so that when those inevitable difficulties occur, emotionally, financially, physically, that people aren't scrambling at the last minute to try to put a plan into place.
Yeah, ironically, the desire not to be a burden ends up creating some sense of a burden when you're being hit blindsided by something.
Exactly right. Yeah. So it's really a gift that you're giving to your kids, and the people you love, to really keep them in the loop and not hide what your financial reality is, so that your cards are a little on the table, even though it can feel very vulnerable and exposing. It's important that those conversations happen.
Final myth. I've always been this way with money, and that won't change.
This is a hard one. So, it goes back to the idea of, do we want to approach life with a fixed mindset mentality or a growth mentality? And no matter how old you are, there's still room to grow and to change. And I see this in two dynamics. The first dynamic is the person who thinks, I'm really bad with money. I've always just outsourced that to my partner. Kind of learned helplessness. And I see that in many couples, and then one partner dies who was the responsible one, and now you're left feeling like, well, now what? And so that can leave you really open to financial predators, poor mistakes, is to know that this may have been how you lived your life, but that doesn't mean that that's how it has to be moving forward, that you can have the confidence that you can learn at any age, you can take that responsibility at any age, and you really can handle this. You can do it. And the worst problem I see is something I really learned when I was in the Marines. A really important piece of advice is that you can outsource, you can delegate authority, but you can't outsource responsibility. So you can task your financial advisor, your CPA, your lawyer, your accountant give them the authority to handle things for you, but the ultimate responsibility is always going to rest with you. And if you're going to live in a state of kind of learned helplessness forever, I just got off a Zoom call with a client where this was a problem, where her mother was like, yep, her husband died, and she had a lawyer and just left everything to the lawyer. And that lawyer slowly got her name on, she was like one day away. The lawyer had created the documents for the mother to sign that would have put the lawyer as the trustee on all of her estate accounts, so that the lawyer would inherit at the woman's death. And the daughter caught it at the last minute.
Oh, wow.
And was like, whoa, what are we doing here, right? And so that's a really good example of someone who just didn't want to look at it, didn't want to take responsibility. I'll just trust blindly, and it almost cost her entire fortune.
Wow. And that brings us back to where we started, which is the emotion, the anxiety, the beliefs that we have around money, and the having to really say, I may not have been good at this earlier, but I can learn now. And I think sometimes we have these ideas of, well, this is my personality, but really most things come down to skill and training. So.
And then the flip side, and this is actually a harder conversation to have with people, is when they're facing cognitive decline in their older years. And it's like, in their self-image is, I'm the responsible one, I'm the in charge one, I've always had this stuff figured out, I can do it all on my own. And when they get to an age or a cognitive state where that's just not the reality, and they have a hard time making that shift to understanding that, you know what, actually now is when I really need some help and asking for it, so that you don't find yourself making some really poor decisions. So,
have you seen somebody be able to recognize cognitive decline and ask for that help?
Not easily, but yes, it comes. But it usually takes some sort of outside intervention. It needs to be usually, we don't tend to make those big changes until we're kind of brought to our knees sometimes.
Right.
And so, but being able to accept that, this is coming probably for many of us, and if you can have those conversations in advance and not be triggered by them so much. But it is hard, one of the hardest conversations you'll ever have is that loss of mental capacity.
Yeah, and it would be hard if you're losing it to be aware of, and so it's like
it's a loop.
Yeah.
Like you're not aware enough to be aware that you're not aware, and then sometimes it just requires somebody else to come in, and a spouse or a child, to be able to take over and have power of attorney.
Well, and I think that speaks to having those conversations earlier, so that you trust that somebody is aware and watching and can help you.
To build that support system around you as you age is so critical.
Well, thank you. This gives us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
I feel like I could go home and write. I probably should journal about each one of these. Before, like you said, before something becomes a crisis. Yeah. And think about these things in a neutral way. Mm-hmm. Do I do this or do I not do that, instead of any kind of emotion attached to it?
Right.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it very much.